Free Agent Frenzy 2025. There were some big names out there on that list. None of them really signed on the actual free agency day of July 1st, but it doesn't matter because there were a lot of great signings and trades, and we are going to grade all of them. All of them here together.
Not
Just
all.
kidding. Completely cherry-picked. Not all of them.
Not all.
A good amount of them, though, I
Very
hope.
solid.
There were a lot of them, but a lot that didn't move any needle at all.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. We're going to, I'm going to go through a list here. And as I said, I want both of you to give a grade to it.
Okay.
Want both? Or you want me to go one by one?
Maybe we'll go one by one. We'll
Go
see.
one by one. Okay.
Doesn't matter.
All right.
If I
I'll go individual.
disagree, I'll interject.
Exactly. So you know what? Yeah. You will be assigning the grade. Luca, I'm looking
Wow.
at you because we're actually going to start with you. We're going to get right into it.
A+ for Mitch Marner.
Because it's a guy who should have joined. It's another guy who should have joined the Buffalo Sabres. It's a guy who should be on the Buffalo Sabres instead that we're starting.
Who's that?
That's JJ Peterka. So we're grading, I suppose, the trade as well as just the deal that he got. You can do this on behalf of Utah.
I can do this on behalf of Utah. Well, the Mammoth finally have a name, and they get a really good player. I think
Cometh the mammoth, cometh the man.
Is that a saying?
Okay.
The only mammoth I know is from Ice Age. Manny.
Manny the Mammoth, baby.
People say Max Verstappen.
Oh, yeah?
Like him a little bit. They bring that.
You know what? A
Oh,
little
it is
bit,
like
actually.
a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think he looks like it.
I could see it. JJ Peterka doesn't look like Max Verstappen, though, and JJ Peterka gets an A. And the Utah Mammoth get an A. I love the move. I think it's a great player to acquire. Take advantage of some of the younger pieces that you have on your team to swing this deal, and you get a legitimate kind of second to first line player that can help out. And I think that Utah was probably a lot closer to the playoffs than we may have expected last year. Or when you looked at the standings at the end of the year, you're like, oh yeah, Utah was kind of right there, right in the mix, played a lot of good hockey. So I think a move like this is really what they need to continue to ascend, push for the playoffs. And I like the contract as well for a player like Peterka.
I think it was great. I actually think I've been saying for a while, Utah feels like they're sneakily kind of building something over there. They got a
Sneaky wagon.
Yeah, they got some good young players. They've got a ton of size that they've, brought in the draft. And now they're being a little bit more aggressive with some of their moves in free agency. So it's great. It seems like the pieces are all kind of coming together at a nice time for the Mammoth, who love their logo, love their jerseys.
Would you have Schmidt and Tanev on there as well?
No.
Okay,
But
well,
thank you for
in
saying
totality,
that.
though, those are also two of the other moves they made, and you get a Stanley Cup champion, Nate Schmidt, who was at one point leading the playoffs in goals very early on, but coming from that championship pedigree solidifies your decor, and then Brandon Tanev is a great kind of third to fourth line, middle of the lineup piece that you lost Josh Doan, you put Brandon Tanev in, and you're good to go.
What was your grade on the Buffalo side?
I don't think we want to talk about that. No,
I'm
know what?
fine.
It was
Give a grade.
horrible.
That's okay.
I don't know, B-.
That's it? Like that good?
I don't know.
People were kind of harsh on the return at first, but then it felt like more when you realize that it definitely filled certain needs, and if you weren't going to pay him,
and I don't mind Josh Doan either taking a swing on him. He looked pretty solid in limited minutes with Utah, so I kind of like taking a swing on him.
It really depends on how what Peterka turns into.
For sure.
If you've lost some kind of 40 goal scorer consistently, then yeah, you lost that trade, and it's probably a D. But if you kind of just filled in those needs, he was going to leave anyways because you weren't giving him a mount because you're tired of paying for young guys who might not really want to be there, and you had to kind of do it. They definitely didn't get the best return. There's no illusions there, but safe saying it's a B minus.
You said though too, you don't know if he's going to be a 40 goal scorer because his shooting percentage was a little through the roof last year, and so will that continue? Not playing with a guy like Tage Thompson, who was really, really good to play with. I don't know.
Yeah, he really, again, I like the guy. I literally had his jersey. I'm not trying to say just because he's out of town that he's not good, but for sure he played a lot better when he was surrounded by the top line guys, which is, when you're getting paid, you have to be that person. It's not just about being around good players. So
kind of feels like at this point, because it's Buffalo trading a young player that hasn't hit his prime yet.
Utah's going to win the cup next year.
No, not that. It just feels like no matter what the return is, people are going to be critical of what Buffalo's doing because it seems like they can't have any sort of young, talented prospect actually see out the project in Buffalo. It just feels like they continue to
They'd
turn
have a
over
right
assets.
to do it too. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a track record, so I get that mentality as well. Gavrikov. Let's go to him. That was the biggest name left on the day. It topped the list. Not necessarily something you'd sell a whole free agent frenzy day on, but at the same time, still, a piece out there that was very much valued and a player you'd want to add to your team. In the end, it was the Rangers who added him for 7 years, $7 million AAV. What do you think of the signing, Thomas? Grade for it.
So I think it's a good fit in New York. You lose Keandre Miller, you need someone to come in with Adam Fox. So I'm going to go with a B as my grade. And I'm hesitant to go a little bit lower, though, because, and I think Gavrikov is a really good, underrated, shutdown defenseman. I think LA, what they're doing, and I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point, they're going backwards in terms of losing Gavrikov and the pieces that they're trying to fill in his absence now. But when I look at this contract, 7 years, $7 million a season. I know I said it earlier today. Cap's going up. People are going to point to that.
Most of these contracts look like they have 7s and 8s attached.
Exactly. Right? And he's a player on the wrong side of 30. And I just think that when that contract gets to year 5, year 6, it might not be all that pretty. But for now, I think New York's doing a good thing. I think he, fits right in very well with the D that they have, and it should help them in the East.
Luca was making some sounds. It sounds like you don't like his grade, man.
You're surprised I went as high as B?
No, I'm surprised he didn't go higher, truthfully.
Really?
Yeah, because Rangers fans, that was the one complaint all year long, was they just couldn't find anyone to play with Adam Fox, and
they were done with Keandre Miller.
They were done with Keandre. Ryan Lindgren wasn't the answer. They shipped him out. They shipped Miller out as well. So their decor is being a little revamped here. But I also think they had this weird thing where Four Nations was a part of it as well. It was Fox didn't look the best, so I don't know.
It's the meaningless friendly.
Crazy. Meaningless friendly, but at the same time,
depending who you ask.
He wasn't one of the guaranteed players, the first 6 named to USA's roster, which he's going to be there, but a bit of a surprise. So I think, the talk about Fox is interesting, the decor is interesting. I'd give it, an A- because he's just a shutdown defenseman. I think he'll hopefully allow Adam Fox to get back to that Norris level that he was at, and last year was kind of a step back for the entire team. I think it's kind of unfair to just pin it on him, but having that steady defensive force where Miller likes to jump up in the play a little. I don't think Lindgren is this shutdown guy, so this type of player I think really fits in with what they're trying to do.
All right, well, let's move on to the Vancouver Canucks. They had a string of signings. 3 Americans as well. I just realized as well.
Oh yeah!
Right, wow! Right, Connor Garland's American.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He is.
They're all staying home.
In the program.
Besser, Connor Garland, and Thatcher Demko. But we can go in order here. I want you to start with Besser because that was a name, obviously, during the year. Kind of get tossed around as far as whether or not he was going to stay or whether or not he was going to go. And it feels like the expectations around him as a player, totally kind of just morphed and changed as years have kind of gone along. It's kind of been, I don't know, you think of him as a true top-end sniper in the league at one point to now more, you're getting some productions and some goals, but he's probably, not one of the top 10 goal scorers in the NHL. Not probably. He isn't one of the top 10 goal scorers in the NHL. But they give him his $7 million. What do you think of it, Luca? 7 years, $7.25 million. For him to stay in Vancouver.
It's a tough one. I think it's a C+ to B-. I get retaining the talent. I think the price tag's just a little high for a guy that, like you said, scored 40 goals one year, but outside of that hasn't really been kind of consistent as far as his goal scoring goes. His point production isn't really that of a $7 or $8 million player. If that's the going rate for a guy that has that talent, sure, right, I get it. If you want to keep that talent in-house and you don't think you have any other ways of acquiring that kind of player, I get paying a little more. But I really think his production, aside from having a crazy high shooting percentage, is really dependent on playing with a player that is really good at setting someone up. And Pettersson could be that player still, but he had a very down year, obviously. And so maybe if that connection rekindles something, it looks like a perfect deal. But I think it's just a slight overpay. But I totally get it from the Canucks perspective, and you don't really have a replacement for a guy like that.
Can you even consider an overpay in that department then? Because it's weird. I always feel like we judge these things in a vacuum versus we are so well aware of the context, which you have very much, perfectly laid out there as far as why he's getting the money he's going to get, the situation that they can actually enter, that's, possible for them, who they're going to sign or trade for or whatnot. As you said, since it's such a small bump from market value, can you even really call that an overpay then if that's what you had to pay him to get him?
And you also, you have these Quinn Hughes rumors flying around. You don't want to just gut your team and now he's part of a rebuild all of a sudden. He's probably, amidst all of these rumors, maybe he'll want out next. And, you're just at square one now after you've drafted and developed all of these talented players.
If he left, sorry, you're saying
if he left, exactly, where it's just okay, you don't sign Bester to this deal. Maybe you don't sign Garland either, and you kind of find replacements along the margins, but it's no, you're kind of in a win now mode because you need to prove to this guy that you're serious about winning and that you need to entice him to stay a little bit. I don't know how true the rumors are, but yeah, I don't know.
Thomas,
it's a weird situation.
You got any thoughts on him? Or?
I think you can kind of look at Vancouver as a whole with these three moves, and it's weird because last year was such a difficult and obscure year for the Canucks where nothing went right. There was this weird locker room turmoil. Your goalie couldn't stay healthy. And then out of that, they obviously don't have a successful season, and these Quinn Hughes rumors arise, like you mentioned. So I think you have to applaud them for being able to keep all their players. You re-sign Garland, you re-sign Demko, you re-sign Besser. And let's be honest, we're only 1 year removed from them being one of the best teams in the Western Conference. So I think it's a good idea to just go back with the core that you had earlier. You hope for a better season, a healthy season from Demko. You hope for Pettersson to maybe get going early and have some confidence and look like that $10 million player like he did earlier. And all of a sudden, you're first in the division, and Quinn Hughes is your captain. And of course, why wouldn't you want to play for this great team? So I like the thought process behind what Vancouver's doing. Yeah, maybe 7x7 is, it's a big contract for Besser, but it's hard to find a goal scorer. And like you said, what's the alternative? So I think this is pretty good business from Vancouver. Demko is I
was going to say, I'm gonna skip the Connor Garland deal because I feel like it's fair value. It's a good contract, 6x6.
I've always liked him as a player too. He's a good player.
It's a good value for you getting. I don't think anyone's going to really disagree here. So I just want to jump to Thatcher Demko because that is the 3 years, $8.5 million. So he doesn't get a huge amount of term or anything like that, but he's such a difference maker for them as far as, you literally have one of the best goalies in the NHL when he's at his, top and actually on the ice. But that's the biggest thing, obviously he's had some pretty serious, health and injury concerns. But they get 3 years. So it doesn't seem like a bad deal, but what do you guys think grade wise? Thomas, what would you give that?
I'm going to go A-. I think it's a relatively good window where both sides kind of met in the middle. Because let's be honest, if he has a clean bill of health, and that's a big if, but if he does have a clean bill of health, he's probably getting $10 million. Because when he's been healthy, he's been so good. He just needs to prove it. It's a little weird with Lankinen also there, eating up a decently heavy amount of money as well. But you need this guy, and if you want to be competing for a Stanley Cup, he's got to be under contract. So I think it's good that, the big rumor, the alternative was that they were looking at shopping him. And I know the Oilers fans were licking their chops, imagining Demko back there with that team. So I think it's good that they kept him. It's a fair value. The term, only 3 years, but he's got to prove that he can stay healthy. And then, Vancouver's just the sky's the limit for them.
All right, well, let's move on to, one current Leaf still and then a former Leaf followed after that. But let's start with Matthew Knies. There's a bit of concern, I take it back. Not a concern because obviously he very clearly expressed that he wanted to stay there, but there was a slight concern just because of the history of how these deals have traditionally gone for the Leafs, even though the Dubas era is gone and even Dubas himself has noted that he wouldn't make the same mistake in that department even if he was in Toronto. But the idea of Toronto overpaying a young player where they have the leverage still probably was in the back of the mind, like a lot of Leafs fans, what is this guy going to get paid? Because he must be pretty well aware of how much the fan base loves him, how much the organization loves him, and just how vital he is now that Mitch Marner at the time when he signed it, was going to be gone, but is gone. They signed him at 6 years, $7.75 million AAV. Luca, you're great on the move.
It's like an incomplete.
Really?
What? Enough.
I was gonna.
That is not what I.
An A plus.
A+.
Yeah.
Really?
Incomplete.
So here's my seeing Logan Stankoven's contract right now and seeing this one. I think Stankoven's probably a better player right now.
You think
Matthew
Stankoven's a
Knies
better
is.
player than Matthew Knies?
I think he creates more for himself.
But who do you think has a higher ceiling? Matthew Knies, 6'3", power forward.
Also, Stankoven has way more term.
Way more
8 years.
term. Yeah, he's got way more term, for sure. I think this about Matthew Knies. I'm really interested to see what he is like without a guy that is generating all of your kind of rush offense, carrying the puck in Mitch Marner on that line. No, in Mitch Marner on that line. Like, if Max Domi is playing on that first line or Michelli's playing on that first line like a lot of people project, is Matthew Knies' impact on the game going to be the same as it was playing with a guy like Marner who is feeding him in different spots and you had that instant chemistry? I'm not saying that Knies can't create for himself, but he does his best work in front of the net, getting into these dirty areas for sure. Does he need a player like that to succeed? I don't know. We're going to find out. But I know you wanted to keep him. I think it's a slight overpayment from what he's done so far in
Slavkovsky's
the
got the
NHL.
same contract, and his production's way better.
I don't know if that's his.
Knies' production is better than Slavkovsky.
Last year he scored more goals. Like
Oh, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
well, I just
wanted
think,
to see what Knies had last year.
I probably not astronomically better, but I just think Matthew Knies, I think he could have gotten more, and I was happy to see that the Leafs got it done at this point. I think the 6 years is kind of a nice marriage because I feel like Knies probably wanted 5. The Leafs obviously probably wanted 7 or 8. But from Knies' perspective, and this is the only thing that I think hurts the Leafs a little bit, is he's not going to get back to the market at 28 years old, 29 years old, and then he can cash in once more.
Sure.
So it's kind of smart
still-
business, but
they
you're
still
still
get
getting
good
6
6
years
years.
for a guy that, like, if he continues to go on the trajectory that he's going, it's a guy who can play on your first line. It's that power forward. That's a rare breed in the NHL. He can get to the dirty areas. I think he's only going to continue to polish some of the areas of his game that still need work.
I think that's the bet you're making.
Yeah.
It just feels like a fair deal on both sides in my mind, is honestly, because as you said, the 6 years kind of allows for him. It's like, well, if you become a first-line player and you're worthy of more money, it's going to suck on the Leafs' end because they're going to have to pay you more and you're going to be available on the market. But if you kind of stay in the area that you are now and maybe even regress a little bit, it's not a bad value to get him at 7.7 or 7.75. But I almost feel like it's unfair with the Logan Stankoven. We'll go over to him now. We'll switch. We're going to do Marner, but let's go Stankoven since you mentioned him. I only say that just because it's like it's Carolina, so they do their business differently. And again, this is what we're talking about, where it's like
For sure.
in a vacuum, sure. Well, you're just looking at it like, what the heck? 8 years, $6 million, like the more term and also less money, but those are two entirely different situations where Knies has worked his way into that lineup where that organization values him to a higher level even than Stankoven, where I'm not saying they don't value him. Clearly, they got him after making one of the biggest trades in their franchise history and getting Rantanen and having him come back kind of at least took a little bit of salt out of the wound of that not working out, and they clearly think this guy's someone for the future. But when you look at 8 years, $6 million, we don't have the news on it, but doesn't that just seem like a guy who's just kind of wanted like a safe bet for themselves? And it's like, how can you grade the Leafs against that? If you take an 8 years, $6 million,
the
isn't that
comparison
Logan?
isn't 1-for-1, and like I know I'm trying to just compare the players 1-for-1, but I think that's just a better deal for the player.
Of course,
personally.
but
or like better deal and better fit overall.
For the team?
Yeah.
Okay,
for the
Carolina.
team and for the player.
Okay.
Yeah, like I think that's like an A plus in my mind, just because I think Stankoven is like just a better play driver than Matthew Knies is. Like can create for himself. I think maybe it's a product of Carolina's system, but I just think that he is going to. I'd be more surprised, let's say, it in this way, if he doesn't put up points or regresses than if Matthew Knies does, because I could see a world where Matthew Knies does have a bit of a regression this year and maybe doesn't reach those like dominant power forward heights that people are saying he's going to reach after last year. Whereas Stankoven, I think, like, is in the perfect situation. He's proved it in Dallas already, playing with a ton of talented players. I don't think this is too big for him.
I just think like
He is smaller in stature, though, so like the worry is there still with him too as a player, and they're both very.
All I'm saying with the Stankoven one is just like it just feels like a different enough scenario that you can't
No,
really
it's not a
put them
one-to-one.
1-to-one
You're right.
because the guy still hasn't proved himself necessarily to that organization the same way.
That's
that
fair.
now when it's time to talk at the table, he's got less to kind of build with than Matthew Knies would have.
For sure.
They were never going to have like similar deals.
And he's a different type of player. Where, like
different type of player.
he's small.
So.
Like that, a small player like that is always going to be less valued, I think, than what Matthew Knies' skill set is.
Okay.
What would you grade St. Coven?
I think
Great
I think it's a great deal too. Like I'd be very happy if I'm both organizations with both these players, and I think
or
they
if you're
are.
like the Canes fans, like,
Yeah.
you should be super.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think and they're both fun players to continue to watch because they're around the same age. They're both ascending, and they have two very different skill sets.
Very.
So yeah, I honestly, because of how similar Knies is more to Slavkovsky, that's why I kind of looked at that deal comparing it to Knies from the get-go. But the Stankoven one's a good thing to
think of the Habs.
Hey, listen, we're back.
Yeah. Maybe I'm being too harsh on the Knies deal, but I'm just curious to see what type of player he is.
Well, it's
this
an
year.
incomplete, so it's not too harsh.
And
It's
it
just-
does.
Like, I think I would give it a B if I had to like give it a grade, but I'm not like so excited about it.
It does feel hard to escape the bubble that you are in. As again, like we're not Leafs fans, but like I'm surrounded by enough of them that how much they love him.
Oh my God.
You're well aware of it.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they value, and because you've experienced
Yeah.
and seen them get burned in these situations before, there is part of me that goes like, well, like, yeah, do I not view this as like, maybe a little bit higher because it's been worse in the past? But I'm sticking to my guns. I think it actually is a great deal for both parties.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the most popular Leaf of his generation, Mitch Marner.
Yes.
Signs, we've already made this joke before, but technically literally did sign the biggest deal in Leafs history with the Leafs, just not to be
He
a
did it.
member of the Leafs. He signs his deal at 8x12. I'm going to clear my throat for this one because this is going to be a big topic, I suppose. We did a video on it as well, but let's recap this to some degree. We'll let Luca do the grade here once again because he's most clearly the Mitch Marner fan club captain, leader. What do you want to call yourself? We can font you
Apologist.
however you'd like. We can font you. What are you giving this grade for the Golden Knights?
For the Golden Knights, it is an A+. You get one of the league's premier players. You didn't give up anything in it. You get the extra year. He is in the prime of his career. He's an 100-point player. He instantly becomes your most productive player from a points perspective on your team. He's going to a place that's won a Stanley Cup. He feels the pressure, I'm sure, being that kind of player, coming from Toronto, the playoff shortcomings being brought in to help this team get back to that area. But this is an A+. There was no better player available. They got the big fish of free agency. And they did it without having to give up anyone in the sign and trade of real consequence, and they've got him locked up for long term.
Okay. And then how about on the Leaf side of things? And it's hard to kind of grade it because if he wants to leave, then there's no real grade. It should be an N-A.
Yeah, for like the Leafs, they got someone for him, so like it's an A. He held all the leverage. Like you got a player, a very serviceable player that's a third line center that can produce a little bit. He's won a cup. I don't think that any Leafs fans would be upset about any kind of return because I don't think a return was like a possibility in their minds. It was just like, yeah, he's going to leave and like that's it. So he held all the cards. It's an A, but it's more of an NA like you said because now what do you do with all this money? But more importantly, what do you do with all this money next year? I think is the bigger question.
I mean,
like I don't even think this year matters.
for the Leafs.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
What do you mean
really
this year?
No, every year
whoa.
when you have Austin Matthews,
Every year,
you know,
what
every year
are
matters.
you on about?
I agree.
This year doesn't matter. I couldn't
But
disagree.
they've got
more.
$26 million in cap space going into next year.
And you know what's going to happen next year? Everyone is just salivating at the thought of all these great players hitting the market. You know what's going to happen?
No,
All of them
none
are
of
going to
them
be
are gonna hit.
re-signed. None of them are going to hit free
I
agency.
know.
But then where do you go from here? That's I guess
They're going to start
the
to
burning
realize that
question.
it's hard to. And listen, when we talked about this morning, and we did a whole video on this, and I talked about both teams need, or both camps need to change. Marner needs to go elsewhere. The Leafs, it just wasn't working. You need to get another shot at the board with a different sort of look, a different type of team, different types of players. So use instead of that, $10 million that he was making up before, you fill in with another guy that makes $10 million. Fill in with 2-3 players and see how that goes.
Can I just add in there? It does feel funny how much the mood has changed a little bit because when everyone knew he was going to walk and they were looking at the free agency class and it looked obviously a lot more full because the cupboards actually still had, Marchand in there. Still had Sam Bennett in there. And it was if we just turn him into them.
It's like they're playing career mode.
See how many lineup projections there were with Sam
Totally.
Bennett at M1, and Marchand another.
None of that happened. These guys are still in Florida. No, that Toronto roster definitely just doesn't look as good because it's missing a 100-point player. That's not me going back on agreeing with you as far as saying that it was time to move on. But when it doesn't line up, it's kind of what we were talking with Brock Besser a little bit. Well, it's like, well, listen, man, you got someone there and you might overpay them a little bit in some cases, whatever. But if it doesn't go your way in the market, there's certainly other teams on this list we're going to talk about where it's like you kind of just like left with your pants down like a little bit. And they might be building, you might be very right for a free agency class that might happen in
or
the
maybe they got more flexibility at the trade deadline this year.
But I disagree.
There's never guarantees.
Sure, I disagree that this year could matter. Like every year matters.
Every year matters.
The team that they have. You don't sign John Tavares even. That alone as well would tell you.
Yeah.
They don't think it's that.
But do you actually in the standing of the league, they are not more of a favorite this year to win the cup?
Maybe that's what they need, though. Like, how many years have we just been hearing constantly? This is your like. Maybe now there's just less pressure on them and something works. Matthews, I don't know. I don't want to sound like
I doubt there's less pressure on them though, from what you're saying, because you're in this market,
always gonna be,
and there's always pressure.
There'll be a similar level of pressure as soon as the playoffs hit. As soon as April hits, the pressure is right back because the expectations were always there. I will say there's one thing I keep seeing where people kind of flip-flop on it, where the move that they made or the non-move that they made in keeping Marner for that extra year and he walks, there's still value to that. I disagree with that so wholeheartedly.
Yeah,
where people are like, well, now he walked and you got nothing for it. Running it back was the risk you took, and there's so much value. And obviously you're using hindsight bias now because it didn't go the way you want. But to roll it back with your strongest team, like what they had last year, was their best roster, and their whole run with Marner. No, any disagreement?
No,
you take that. You do that. There is value in that, and I get that it feels weird because now there's just an asset that walks out the door. That's not how it works. They didn't just walk out the door. You had a full year with them, and it didn't work out.
Yep.
So, anyways,
agreed.
Let's move on to some defensemen, and away from the Leafs, who apparently are taking the year off, according to Luke. Crazy talk.
Wait for McDavid to come home.
Yeah. Let's speak of his home with Evan Bouchard in the Edmonton Oilers. Man, he was a huge topic of the Stanley Cup final because he's such a, I don't want to say confusing player because you really know what you're getting with him. He's just such a skilled offensive player who defensively takes...
He takes shifts off. You talk about the Leafs taking the year off.
Or he takes risks. He takes risks, and that's kind of what comes with his game.
Some mistakes.
But this almost feels Leafs-esque if we are to draw some parallels here. 10.5, so it's a pretty high amount AAV. In 4 years, it's not a lot of term either. And it's an Oilers team that knows they're in a win now mode because your best player, obviously, you don't know what's going to necessarily happen with them in the future. And every single year is a Stanley Cup contending year. But $10.5 million, it's not saying that it's completely removed from his market value. But what do you guys think of this? Is definitely not a hometown discount of any sort.
Well, it's his first chance to really break the bank on a contract, and just with how he's played in recent years. And he's a very, very important part of their team. He's put up historical level statistics in the playoffs.
Bobby Orr was next to him in his stats.
I think that gets lost often in some of his hiccups. And maybe it's because he plays with McDavid and Draisaitl, so people don't take his point totals as seriously as if he's really driving some of that offense. But he's a very, very talented offensive player. I'm still going to go see just because it's... I don't think that's...
No, it was just fine to laugh because he said all these nice things, and he was just he dropped the hammer on that team.
First of all, a little bit of insight into my grading. A B is good. A C is kind of whatever. And an A is very good. That's how I'm looking at it.
I don't want to talk scales with this guy.
We had an argument earlier today. Well, that's my scale for this. A C is whatever. I'm feeling whatever on it. I think it's a little high in the AV because he's not incredibly well-rounded, and I talked about that Noah Dobson, the Habs paying him 9.5, that's a risk. This is even more than that. Yes, you get a little bit more production. So
we'll
that's
talk about
what
him
I'm gonna
next.
go see. And then the term obviously isn't great, but it gives you 4 more years of this window. It gives you the chance to go to McDavid and say, hey, we got Bouchard for another 4 years. We got Draisaitl locked up. You have to stay. And hopefully this amount, and they've done well shedding Kane and Arvidsson now, hopefully now they have a plan in place to make sure that McDavid stays. I think he will, but it's going to be a huge amount. So it's difficult. We talked about the core 4 in Toronto for a while, and now a lot of people are saying that Edmonton with Darnell Nurse and Bouchard and McDavid and Draisaitl,
They've got a core 4 of their own.
It's even more money that is invested into 4 players, and Nurse especially. I don't mean to have people to catch strays here, but he's not producing like any of the core 4 in Toronto were producing. So it's a difficult situation.
Luca, you got a grade for that one?
Yeah, I kind of feel similarly, like probably a C+, B- around that area. Just like you said, I think the term is a little scary, and that amount of money for him. I mean, you're always going to compare. You did the graphic, and like Cale Makar's not even on there, and things like that. And
It's when you sign him.
What was the
when
graphic?
they signed, the graphic was the highest paid defenseman in the league by AAB, and it's when they signed, and so that is going to change things.
Oh,
obviously.
Carlson signed a while ago, and
Carlson
so
signed
did
a while
Doughty.
ago, and so did Doughty. But at the same time, yeah, like if you can't just not sign him, like there's no kind of comparable to him how he plays in the league. Like Dobson's probably a Bouchard light, honestly.
Yeah.
How like Islanders fans have talked about him. It's like great offensive player, but like the mistakes are sometimes just backbreaking, even if they're not plentiful. Like I think we think of these players and it's like, oh, they make mistakes all the time. It's like, no, they probably don't make as many mistakes as you think, but the ones they do make probably end up in the back of your net like
They're
10
high
times out of
danger
10. They're high danger mistakes, which aren't good, but they also create at the same time. So I don't know. Like you can't not lock them up, but the money is a bit.
All right, Noah Dobson. We've said his name enough, so let's make him appear in this chat. 8 years, $9.5 million. As you said, this man, he wanted the smoke. Took the Montreal market, or Marché, which someone had commented that,
Yes.
that technically was correct. Okay.
Marché.
Okay,
take
we
it.
learned something.
Marché.
I love that, actually. If that actually is true, of like hitting the market, he hit the Marché. I don't know, I just think of muffins and great foods when I think Marché. But anyways.
That's the boulangerie.
Ooh, yeah, it's the bakery.
I think that's how you say it.
That's a bakery.
Really nicely
Yeah,
done.
they got muffins.
That's not the same thing, but
Thanks. I took
think
French.
good pronunciation.
for grade
Your mom speaks French.
Yeah, she does.
Your French should be even better.
Really
It's
nicely
not.
done.
It's not pat yourself on the
I'm like, yeah, she does. Like I do it.
Yeah, yeah. We speak French.
Yeah. We
speak
You look at him. Anyways, Noah Dobson. What do you think of the contract? Well, we'll let you, since you're smiling from ear to ear, but at the same time, you've been pretty critical of a similar player, as you said, in Evan Bouchard, but a very different term here, even though the salaries are similar.
So I'm going to go with a B on this one. And yes, I said he is quite similar to Bouchard. And I also talked about earlier this morning when we did another video about a bit of a surprise with the fit with Hudson, because, again, similar offense on your defenseman. Why I love this move and why I'm grading it higher than Dobson is more for the deployment of assets with Montreal, giving up those 2 first-round picks for Dobson, because I truly think that the trajectory that this franchise is going, it wasn't smart to just take those 2 first-round picks, and then you're waiting 3-4 years, if they even pan out, for them to make an impact on your team. Montreal has had their years of drafting, and they've had their years of banking on young prospects. Now it's time to acquire a guy who's 25 years old, approaching the prime of his career, give him an 8-year deal, and allow him to be another key part of your core. So that's why I'm grading it a little higher than the Bouchard deal. Just because I think the situations are a little differently. But again, similar type of player. A little bit of risk with that both amount and the term. But I do prefer an 8-year deal over a 4-year deal as well.
Okay, Luca, you're outside of the Montreal bubble. You got some objective glasses onto this. What do you think of the deal?
I was gonna go A, truthfully, because I honestly think
I'm not biased.
that
You're not? Does that prove it? I don't know,
You know
about
what?
that.
See.
You know what? Just to prove. Yeah.
the reason I was gonna give it an A is just I think that Dobson's a little better in his own end of the ice than Bouchard is, and so that kind of has more value to me because he also doesn't have to be like the most dynamic offensive defenseman on this team either with Lane Hudson. Like the deployment strategy of both of those guys and who they play with and how they maybe play together at some points in some situations is going to be really, really fascinating. Montreal had a need for a right-hand shot defenseman that could play in your top four, that can be a cornerstone defenseman. So, like you said, the asset management of it is so smart by them. Like the window they're in, these first-round picks they didn't need anymore. I just love everything about it. It's an A for me.
Okay, well, let's stay with the defenseman position, but we're going to switch teams here. It's a city that usually has no problem attracting talent in every other sport. And I mean every other sport. I mean the NBA, I mean the MLB, I mean the MLS. But in hockey, it has not seemingly worked the same way at all for the Los Angeles Kings, especially this season in particular. I don't mean historically. Obviously, they attracted Gretzky. Don't worry. You don't have to shove that at us. But I feel like in the last little while, they other than Pierre-Luc Dubois, haven't really been like.
It didn't really work out that well either.
No, that one didn't work out.
Too,
It was trade, exactly. It wasn't just straight market. But Cody Ceci, I don't think that was like who the Kings fans would have been looking at when the day started, is like the signing that they'd be discussing at the top of their ledger. They certainly, they lose Gavrikov, right?
Yep.
So that one hurts. It seems like they wanted to go in for Rasmus Anderson, which would have been a sign and trade again, but apparently, reportedly, he wants to go to the Vegas Golden Knights. There's a bit of a rejection there potentially. 4 years. $4.5 million for Cody Ceci. Luca, I feel like you had a pretty strong reaction to it when you heard it live. So what is it now?
I think it's an F, truthfully. Like, your plan this offseason was to trade Jordan Spence, a younger guy that I feel like has put up some pretty solid numbers, and get rid of Gavrikov. Let him walk. Don't pay him that money. Maybe he wanted to leave. Whatever. That's fine. But your plan of replacement was Brian Dumoulin and Cody Ceci. I just think you didn't need to trade Jordan Spence. You got so much slower, so much more rigid, I want to say, and one-dimensional on the back end of, like, you don't have these puck movers anymore. You don't have I feel like Spence was kind of that guy. Gavrikov was obviously a stay-at-home defenseman, but, like, Cody Ceci, if Gavrikov's a stay-at-home defenseman, Cody Ceci is, like, he's not crossing center ice.
He's lost at home.
He is at home forever and not leaving. And then Brian Dumoulin is like, what are we doing here? I just don't see the vision. I thought LA was coming into this maybe like version of themselves where they were a little more high flying, like leaning into the offense a little more. And now it seems like they are just kind of reverting back into signing guys that are defensive minded. And I don't know if this is it. I'm not into the plan here.
It's a very odd makeup for them. Obviously, during the regular season, they had some like exceptional runs. Like they were like really, great team to watch, especially at home. Obviously, stellar record, best record in the league at home. As you said, like there's just no real moves being made that seem to inspire much confidence. But I want to ask you guys, because it does seem to be a thought amongst a lot of people that it really is the way in which they play that seems to let them down as far as attracting talent to them. Because if you do kind of play a certain way for a player and things aren't working out, A, you just might not suit you, or B, it might kill your value if you were to sign there on short-term deals, where you maybe are trying to take a swing on someone who might just join for a couple of years and move on. Like, you're going to miss out on someone like that as well, even though that happens less in the NHL now. What do you make of that? Do you think that that's why people are staying away from LA? Because, like, other than that, I don't know. I don't want to get into state tax talk again. Like, what is it? Why are people not going to Los Angeles?
It's hard to attract. If you're not drafting the uber talented, high-level players in the NHL, it's hard to bring those guys to your team. I think they have a solid core. Mm-hmm. They're deep down the middle. Like, they've gotten so many good years at a Kopitar. Byfield looks like they have good players. I just think what's hurt them is they just can't get past Edmonton in the first round. And when I look at the moves that they made today, I don't think that they're any closer to doing that. Maybe it's nice that they got Corey Perry. You can tell them a couple secrets that were in the Oilers locker room. But other than that, like, It just
We'll add Dumoulin in there.
Yeah,
What can we get you to give a grade for Dumoulin, who's 3 years, $4 million as well?
I'm gonna go again with maybe a D. Like, and that's I just don't understand.
I don't know.
Sorry, Kings fans, I shouldn't.
Look
have
at what the
asked for a
Kings have
grade.
been doing. You lost Sean Dursey. Brant Clark seems to always be in these weird trade rumors, even though he's one of the most young or one of the youngest and most talented defensemen that they have. Spence goes. Like, you're getting older. You lose Gavrikov, who's a really good player, because he wanted $7 million a year. But now you're giving $8.5 million to Cody Ceci and Brian Dumoulin, who probably, if you look at how deep they are on paper, it's probably going to be their 5th and 6th defenseman. That's a lot of money to be paying a bottom pair guy. And I know Cody Ceci, he was with Dallas this year, he was with Edmonton the year before that. Like, he tends to be a guy to play in that bottom pair on really good teams, and he's clearly wanted there for a reason.
Teams like him
Yes.
a lot. As much
Teams
as he
do.
gets like a lot of flack from fans, like his track record as far as who keeps signing him as well and acquiring him, certainly would say that coaches like him.
And I'm sure he's a
GMs at the
serviceable.
least.
He's more than serviceable player, but for how much they're paying these players, I'm not into it. 4 years too. He's 33 years old, 32 years old, around there. It's just.
And now, like, you're a Drew Doughty injury, which has happened and we've seen, and another injury on your blue line from, like, Cody Ceci and Brian Dumoulin having to play big minutes, responsible minutes for this team. And I don't think that's a position that the LA Kings competing for a Stanley Cup right now want to find themselves.
They've gotten older. Last year, their splash in free agency was Joel Edmondson.
Mm-hmm.
Again, another guy who, like, yeah, he's a good shutdown. He can play hard minutes. He's a guy you don't want to go into the corners with, which is nice to have. You don't want to have D that players want to play against. But it's just like, it's weird that they're so fixated on getting this type of player, and now it feels like they're overpaying for them. So
The goal is to get out of the first round,
I guess.
But I'm going to shift over to a pair of teams that met in the second round, very controversially as far as how it ended. We're going to start with the Panthers, though. Stanley Cup winners back-to-back. They made 3 signings so far in this window, at least of consequence. I want to start, though. We'll stay again with defenseman Aaron Ekblad. 8 years, $6.1 million AAV. What is the grade on that for you, Luca?
A+. $6.1 million. He's making, like, 1.5 more than Cody Ceci is. So that is just
Kind of nuts.
crazy when you think of it from that perspective. And I know the state tax thing, whatever, but
Not just that, in the culture, organization. He's been there.
organization,
It's a lot of
hometown
factors.
discount, 100%.
It's the vacuum thing, as we said. It doesn't
Yes.
work that way. Yeah.
But at the same time, like, great value for a player that, like you said, has been there from the beginning of his career. It's an important voice in the locker room, just as important as a player on the ice as him. A+.
That seems pretty easy to discuss there. Brad Marchand, a man who was rumored to go, a number of teams with. I really do genuinely wonder how close, if at all, he was to going to the Leafs. Was that just like complete trolling? Is he at any point thinking like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm a Boston guy. I still want the memories there to kind of burn brightly in the memory of fans there, and does going to Toronto kind of tarnish that in any way, shape, or form? Like, well, why wouldn't I just stay in Florida and keep winning here? I do wonder. It might have been 0%, and he was just messing around. But at the end of the day, it's Florida who gets him. It's the term that most people are kind of looking at, because the AAV seems pretty fair, especially for what you're getting, and because you really just want him for the playoffs, and they're so loaded anyways with depth. But it's the term, the 6 years for the 5.25 that most people are looking at. Thomas, you looking at it strangely, or you just think that don't matter? It was a good deal.
I think Jeff O'Neill said it best yesterday on Overdrive that by year 5 or year 4 even, he's going to be a $6 million skills coach. Because that term, like, that's borderline like cap circum. What are we doing with that term? It's crazy. He's going to be 43 years old when that contract's finished. So I don't know how this is all going to work. I'm sure I know this under the new CBA, there's going to be new rules with like LTIR and stuff like that too. So
we'll be looking at that one.
Like,
you can
I'm-
tell that the other
yeah.
teams, which obviously will like snitching on each other, be like, you better have your eyes on that.
this contract
Guy
will
better
be a
not be
disaster.
running a hot dog stand for that price in the building still.
He will not. If he's playing at 43 years old, all the power to him. I will personally applaud him at this very table because I just can't see that happening. But hey, you did everything you could, Bill Zito. Bravo to keep all your players. Like, yeah, you lose Nate Schmidt, but nobody thought they could keep Bennett, Ekblad, and Marchand. There were even clips of Ekblad.
Did you give it a grade, by the way? Did you give it Marchand?
I'll give it a B+ because of the term. The term's just more laughable, though. Like, they found a way to keep him, which is great. But
Sure.
that's going to become a bad contract. Doesn't really matter because your cup window is still open, so I'm going to go B+.
Okay. And Luca, I feel like you'd just be in agreement with that anyway. So
Yeah, I mean, like, it's hard not to give all these moves an A+ because we thought on paper it's impossible that these guys are not going to be back.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And there it was. Hit us over the head. And Sam Bennett, 8 years,
plus.
$8 million. You're giving that an A+ right off the
I'll give it
hop,
an A.
right off the rip.
A-.
A minus.
Just
I'm a
either
tougher
way.
marker.
You're tougher. Yeah, I'm pretty.
You don't want to take my class. If
Yeah.
people that take my class, they transfer out of it. I'm tough.
People that take my
Tough
class
with the grades.
Do people? Have you ever had that where you just transfer it out of a class?
Yeah,
Because you're-
I tried to. My math teacher wouldn't let me, and I subsequently almost failed the class still because I didn't need it and didn't care.
I had one of.
You guys weren't trying hard in school, eh?
I was in.
Tried.
We were.
Advanced functions in grade 12. Who needs that?
I tried hard in that.
You and I went to the same program, except when I went to it, they had you take English courses because you had to have an English minor. So one of my favorite classes, genuinely, I think it was my third year. It was on like biographies, how they're written, and just discussing and dissecting them, whatever. And everyone loved the class. Like everyone adored it. Great teacher, great, just like subject. And then they took the midterm. I think she failed 70% of the class. And we were like, this is the hardest test we'd ever taken. And I think half the class left because they're like, I can't risk it. This is a great class, but I don't know what's going on with the marking. And everyone just bailed.
It's me as the professor.
All right. John Tavares. Let's switch over to the other second round matchup there. The one team that took Vegas to 7 games, right? So, right?
Florida to 7 games.
Pardon me.
Yeah.
What did I even just say there?
Vegas.
Oh, sorry.
It's a game of interest.
It's all the
You guys
same,
got
right?
Marner on the mind.
I got
Hey.
Marner on the mind. Pardon me. Yeah. Florida, the only team that took Florida 7 games. John Tavares, finally, and the eyes of Leafs fans, so they get a hometown discount. They've been itching for one of those. What does he sign? He signs 4 years, 4.38. It's lower than what people even were expecting. I saw people saying they'd take 5 from, which also would have been very fair. But they go even lower than that. Clearly, the guy's set up here with his family. He's a Toronto guy. Seems like a layup as far as a grade goes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've given up too many A's, but to me, this was an A+ because it was so shocking. I think the Duchesne deal when that came out, just because he had 82 points last year and he took $4 million, it was like, oh my god, like what's Tavares going to take if he's taking that? And yeah, it's a great move by Johnny, and it's crazy how quickly he just wins everyone back over. Like, talk about Marner being that like hometown kid and how that kind of failed to resonate after a certain while. To me, John is just once again seen as that like kid in the Leaf pajamas who's like, I just want to play for the Leafs and I just want to live here and I just want to win in Toronto. And he takes a nice discount after being paid $11 million for the past 7 years or 8 years or whatever and not winning.
That's flung.
And everyone's like, oh, John, you're back. The kid in the pajamas.
I don't know, but like it's all graded differently. The kid, this guy is from New York State, or sorry, Long Island. Pardon me.
This guy was
Pajama
booing. He was
boy.
throwing snakes on the ice.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
I like Tavares. He's good.
I don't know. People never soured on him in the same way. I think they were down on him, but I don't think they ever
Everyone's
were
like,
sour.
give him the captaincy back. Like the same people that were calling for it to be ripped off his shirt are like,
Yep.
he should be the captain.
That sounds like Toronto fans.
Exactly.
Just thing on like also because we've mentioned hometown discount a number of times here. I think it first came up when we were discussing Evan Bouchard, but like no player is entitled to do that.
No.
But I will, because get your money. Like, come on now. Like, if you're watching this, like, you should probably be in favor of the worker. So, like, get your cash versus the money pouring in. You'd probably prefer your favorite players to get that anyways. But we'll say clearly, like, yeah, it gets you plaudits. Like, as we discussed on and off screen with Marner, like, how you handle these contracts and the deals that you make, I think you deserve both ends of the stick with that. If you hold out for your money, no one should judge you in the sense that it's just like, I don't know whether or not I would do that if I was sitting there. The same with taking less money to stay somewhere that you want to stay. But if people want to be bitter with you as a result of you going to get that maximum money and taking that cap space, that's what happens. And so by the very same token, if you take less money, they should say, give them that C back. That's C attitude right there. So let him have those plaudits because you deserve it if you're just like literally taking less money. That's my opinion.
A+ for Tavares.
Okay. Last one here because Toronto got their 63, and it wasn't Marchand. It was Matthias Michelli. That's who they were gunning for, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That was a honestly kind of an unexpected trade.
That was the one. Yeah, it was pretty unexpected. Solid B+, I think. Guy that like had a bad year last year. Year before that was really solid. Maybe playing him with Matthews because he's a great passer, unlocks something in him, gets him a big payday, and there we go. You found your Marner replacement or your Marner light or whatever you're kind of looking for in that. But I think you buy low on a guy like that because you see some of the skill he has and you talk yourself into him playing with better players now in Toronto, whether that's Willie, whether that's JT, whether that's Austin, whether that's Knies, and him being able to dish the puck to those guys and put up some more points because of it.
I feel like the Leafs have a pretty solid track record of finding these players who were, doing all right in smaller markets like Utah or wherever and finding some offense out of them. So, yeah, I think it's one of those where I know you gave the incomplete earlier with Knies, and I think it's what a non-hot take to say, oh, we have to wait and see how he gels in the new city. But with this particular trade, I see actually quite a high ceiling, or maybe it just doesn't really pan out and it's whatever. But I'm just gonna say it was a solid B.
Okay. Final thoughts as we close this out here. A singular answer from you guys on this. Just give me an elevator pitch on your winners and losers. Your winner, Luca, from today.
My winner is the Carolina Hurricanes. We didn't talk about it. Keandre Miller. They trade for him.
Oh, sorry. We didn't
extension.
cover that. You should
okay.
You should give a grade for that, to be honest.
I'll give it like a B+ right now, but I
think the deal too, in case you didn't check it out, because we did have that in there.
8 years.
8 years, 7.5 AAV.
Yeah, $7.5 million
was the deal, and we don't know what the return was to trade for his rights and then sign him.
Happened right before we recorded.
So
guy made a graphic. I didn't even look at it.
That's okay.
Didn't have it in my. I'm sorry.
The reason why I think they're winners, though, is because every defenseman that the Hurricanes acquire has a great track record of just like succeeding in their system, and they kind of do well with these like offensively talented guys too. Where you think of like Brent Burns and Dmitry Orlov and Shane Gostisbehere last year, guys that have some offensive upside but also are pretty solid defensively, or they just work their way to being solid within this system and playing with guys like Jacob Slavin. So I'm kind of like, I'm saying a B+ to temper expectations because I still believe in Keandre as like a young up and coming defenseman. But like this could be as high as like an A+ because of their system and how successful it's been in turning these players into really solid contributors that are just so kind of dialed into whatever system Rod is teaching them. Like it just works out for these kinds of players, and I'm really excited to see the fit. And then Stankoven deal was outstanding, so I think those two things in totality are why I give the Hurricanes like a winner stamp today.
Your dark horse pick to win the Stanley Cup. He said it earlier. He just didn't want to say it here.
That's you with the Hurricanes?
No,
I'm joking.
They have
okay.
We talked.
Yeah,
they have the second best odds.
But
and
hey,
their fans are gonna hit us up in the comments being like, we're underdogs that we weren't supposed to be good. You're favored.
They are viewed as underdogs.
You're a good,
favored to win the cup
team. You're not
every
an
year. Like
who knows?
Well-run team.
I still
Come on.
think they want to make one more splash in the forward market. Who knows? I know Ehlers hasn't signed yet. Maybe that's someone that they're looking at.
It's been rumored.
But I do like the Miller move. I like the Stankoven move. I guess for my winner, and this is what a tough answer, but the Florida Panthers keeping everyone is just like, I would have never believed that this was even possible. I wouldn't have believed it at the trade deadline when they got Seth Jones and they got Brad Marchand. I wouldn't have believed it right when they won the
keep
cup.
all of it.
So it's just to keep that core intact. You have so many good players locked up for the next 5 years still, and a lot of those players are still in their prime. So yeah, Florida Panthers to me, they're the Stanley Cup favorite right now, and they will be come puck drop in October.
Losers. Talking losers. Well, who do you think?
We might have the same one. LA Kings.
I can go with a different one, just but I mean, not that I love what the Kings are doing, but I don't think what the Boston Bruins.
Oh yeah, the
We didn't talk about them at all, so go ahead, say.
Trading for Victor Arvidsson, it's just like, I mean, the Canucks did it earlier with Oilers. All these teams are just throwing the Oilers a lifeline by helping them get out of these contracts.
Yeah, McDavid, we want him to stay in Edmonton.
Exactly.
Maybe
Don't
they
love
do.
that
Maybe
move.
they do.
Maybe Boston.
I don't want them to go to
maybe
Toronto.
Boston's knows what's going on, and they're just like, no.
Trying to sewer the Leafs. They're like, we see the Toronto has
Yeah.
$26 million in cap space.
No.
We'll take this off your hands.
I just don't really know what the direction is in Boston
No,
right now. And I'm curious to hear from the perspective of Bruins fans. Like, how are you feeling? Do you feel like this is honestly like, are we entering a rebuild soon because Pasternak, Swayman, and McAvoy are all in their prime?
Entering.
Or
I mean,
was
yeah,
last year
last
just
year
like
was like they're kind of
a one-off
That
and
was
they're going to be
pretty-
back this year? But I don't think the moves that they made are going to help them get back. And I also don't believe in their prospect pool. Great draft pick on Friday. But other than that, it's just like, I don't know. Boston, to me, not great right now.
I was surprised when I was doing the World Hockey Championship, the AHL playoffs were going on at the same time, and Matthew Patras was playing in that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I completely forgot about him. Like, he had that great start.
It's such an amazing
He was like
start.
playing right away after the
Right?
draft.
And we were like, these guys, they're getting away with it again. Like, no matter what, they just plug in, another guy, next man up. And damn, yeah.
I'm sure he'll be back.
Anyway, I'm sure he
He'll
will
be a
too.
good
I'm sure he'll be-
NHLer.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He had a great. I just meant that
They finally didn't get away with it.
yeah, they didn't get away with it in that case. They got to develop him, and hopefully he develops into a good player. But you already said Kings. We don't have to discuss that.
No.
I think we have fully outlined why we thought they didn't have a great free agency frenzy day. But speaking of actual great free agent frenzy things, Thomas and Jaden worked on a
Thank you,
wonderful
sir.
video
Appreciate it.
piece. You
I
should
don't know
check
if
it
I'm
out.
gonna shout out.
Yeah, of course.
Thank
Go
you.
check it out. Watch it after this, maybe. It's why, even if you win today, you don't win in June.
That's true.
You win in July. What was your line? It was far more poetic than whatever I just trampled over it with. June, July, who knows what month it is? What was it?
The teams that win in July usually lose in April, which means they might not even be making the playoffs. So yes, free agency, I've been vocal about it before, and I actually went in and dove and did some research.
Some great
to back it
research.
up.
There's some serious research
but
in there.
I've never been a believer in building your team on this day, and I think that the draft and development, and we just talked about Florida, making opportunistic trades is really the real key to winning a Stanley Cup. So, yeah we'll see how today, if today changes my mind at all.
We'll also have a quiz coming out. I figured I'd just mention that. That's coming out tomorrow. So enjoy that. That one, it's a season review quiz, And then I will disappear from screens while you guys take that up, and because we're gonna get some other projects coming up. So I'm very excited for you guys to be a part of that too. Because we've got some fun shoots coming up. That's summer. Summer's the best time. I don't know. You gotta just try stuff.
What shoots are you talking about?
You don't know about it. Exactly. Doesn't know. That's the whole point. It's a surprise. We're going to be trying some new stuff, as I said. So, anyways, thank you for joining us. If you like the video, why not like it? That helps us out. We really enjoy that. Of course, subscribe to the channel. Getting closer to that 100,000. It's all wonderful. So, hope you had a wonderful Canada Day. Or if you're in the U.S. or any other country on this planet, just a good July 1st.